Hey, all right, so this video is about the ego, and it is almost by its nature a futile attempt because, like, I'm making it is something that is so challenging to explain to somebody, especially if they already think that they understand what the ego is, they understand what the word means, what it signifies, how the ego works. And because in my experience, I have actually, I don't know, I'm not saying that, like, I've never had a conversation with somebody who I felt got it. I'm sure a lot of people do. It's not like it's the biggest mystery in the world, but for some people it is. And so I have had, at times, I have just chosen to give up because it's like trying to explain, what is it? So, like, I use every analogy, kind of metaphor, any way of like illustrating the way that I see it and have it explained to me, to other people. But it's like no matter what I say, it goes over their head, in one ear and out the other, or is just like it just gets glossed over. It makes zero impact, and it just completely does not register. And I think it's essentially because it's speaking another language. I might as well be speaking Dutch. I am Dutch, so I can say that I have a Dutch passport. I'm a Dutch citizen. I don't speak Dutch, but for what it's worth, speaking a language that is just completely foreign to somebody else that they just have no reference for, and so there's just no way that they can actually decipher what is being said, or never mind, or even like come close to what do you put it, like putting your finger on it when it is present. There's no way to identify it, because it's just this thing. So for myself, like when I end up in conversations about this with somebody who thinks that they know what the ego is and how it operates and what its components are, and can relate it to other things. And so I was talking with somebody recently about this, and the way that I thought of an analogy, it's like trying to explain to somebody. One way is that it's like if you can see it, but other people can't. So it's like being able to see ghosts. But other people can't see them, so they just can't, they have no reference for what, unless you've done research. That of course changes everything. If you look into this kind of stuff, like it takes a formal education to essentially come to a place where you have even just the most rudimentary, basic understanding of what the ego is and how it functions, what its place is, and what its pitfalls are, what its shortcomings are, and where it fits in with everything else, because it's like it is a component of something, and it's not all bad per se, right? And this is the problem, is that word gets used in a context a lot of the time to describe essentially a person who is it's often termed as like egocentric, where they're very much focused on themselves. They don't really take others into account. They're kind of just it's really about image and boasting and that kind of stuff. And so it is just such a challenging thing. And so, like, in my time post the conversation that I had about it, I was thinking about it, and it's kind of like, to me, it's like somebody who is ego, who is essentially operating from their ego, which is where I would say 99% of people are at. Like, there is an old Sioux proverb, and it says, it's essentially the greatest journey that any one of us ever makes in their lifetime is the 12 inches that it takes to get from the head to the heart. I mean, that can be paraphrased in any way, right? But I mean, it's essentially it. I mean, it is huge. It's like basically the obstacle. It is the obstruction. It is the one of the like main purposes of being here, as far as I can tell, is to learn how to manage that energy and work with it in a way that is appropriate, so that it doesn't run rampant in your life and create problems, right? And so like it's this thing people operate. So like, you know, just like to give a little context, it's like when I talk with some people, like I have an intellectual nature. That's where I was for a lot of years, and that's fine. I mean, I still have that. I still have access to intellectual stuff. However, I've grown, I've changed. You know, I have, for what it's worth, evolved, and I no longer operate from this place anymore. I'm a heart-centered person. I've made videos about this. I reference it frequently, and it's just that like this thing is trying to understand everything. It thinks it understands things. It cares about image, and it likes to label things. It likes to compartmentalize things. It analyzes things. It notices things. It points them out, and it wants others to know what it knows, because it's about image, and it's about like stuff like that. And so it, like, you know, it's a and that's more like an ego problem. I mean, that's not completely what the ego is, right? I don't really want to go into the how do you call it, the mechanics of it right now, because it's just I'm just trying to spit out one thing, but give a little bit of you know, backstory to it all, so that it's not so out of context that it doesn't make any sense. I mean, a little at a time. And I think that is the way when you're essentially approaching the subject of the ego, is you cannot, it is so much for a person to wrap their mind around, that it is just overwhelming, and it's like they just can't do it. Because for most people, I would say the ego is the only thing that they know. Most people are very unfamiliar with the heart and what its purpose is, and how the language that it speaks, how it and what it represents, and all that kind of stuff. And so it is so anyways, I can't remember where I was going with that, but yeah, so like the heart, you know, I'm a heart-based person, and so, you know, I still enjoy some, you know, my intellectual pursuits. I still do pursue higher knowledge. I'm always, you know, seeking to up my understanding, you know, to move beyond wherever I'm at, and embrace something that is new, something that is more, that makes more sense, right? I mean, but you know, when it comes to having conversations with other people, because I end up in these intellectual conversations, it's just not enough for me anymore. I mean, I don't enjoy having conversations with people that are purely intellectual, because when you're missing the heart component, it's like for a person who's heart-based, it's like, geez, I don't know, I'd have to create an analogy or come up with something right now. It's like something without something. I mean, it's like talking just for the sake of talking, you know. It's like missing the essential component that makes it all worthwhile. it's like icing, or no, cake without the icing. It's like it's missing the thing that brings it all together, that makes it beautiful, that makes it shine, that makes it glow, that is really the most enjoyable part of it all. I mean, the other part is just kind of the nuts and bolts. It is an element of it, but it's not the it's like, for myself, I would rather not have intellectual conversations, period. I would rather be alone. I would rather sit in silence. I would rather meditate, do yoga, read a book, anything, but have these intellectual debates with people who are convinced that, they're clever, or they're smart, or their mind is sharp, and and that the lines that they're working along are intelligent and they're wise. I mean, yeah, it's really frustrating. But I mean, that is a part of my own dilemma as a person. I mean, I'm being very open and honest and vulnerable here too, because I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm just sharing what my own experience of this is, and then giving a few insights into how I myself am coming to look at it, based on essentially how I process this information and relate to it and whatnot. And so basically, the way that I have come to kind of conceptualize a person who is, for what it's worth, dwelling in the realm of ego consciousness, just meaning that they don't understand how the heart works, and they're not operating on that level, which is to do with surrender and acceptance and letting go and faith and things like that, and love, but that word love, it's a very powerful word. It's not just how people use it to describe like a preference or something that they like. It's something much deeper than that, and I made a video about that. But so like when I think about how I would, I suppose next time I would try to explain it to somebody, if it came to it, it's like a person who is trapped in prison. The prison is the mind, but an element of the mind, because there are different aspects of it. And so it is this one part, they're stuck inside of a box. In the way I think of it, like an actual physical prison where people are incarcerated for a period of time, so that they, and they're doing a sentence or whatever. And so, and it's like they're in this place where it's like if they've been there for so long that they don't know anything else. It is what is familiar to them. It is what's comfortable. They've lost touch with the outside world, and so it's essentially frightening to them. They're, and so even if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, you're free to go, here's the key," they would literally take that key, and they would close the door, and they would lock the door, and they would just go back inside and sit somewhere where it's safe. Because if they were to venture beyond the confines of that, of that cell, of that prison cell, it's absolutely terrifying to their ego, right? Because the ego is this element of a person's consciousness which thinks that it knows what stuff is about. It thinks it understands who it is in relation to other things. It thinks it understands what other things are and how it all works, how things fit together. So it's like your entire concept of basically everything is wrapped up in your ego system, in your belief system, and whatnot, right? And so, and I'm not saying that it's entirely bad or detrimental, right? But just like for the purposes of this conversation, it's like it is this thing that to you is everything. And so if you were to learn that actually all of that is, it's not that it's not real. Like my cousin said an acronym, she was learning about this, it was FEAR, and the acronym was false ego appearing real, right? So it's just like you have this illusion, and it's just, I think that the reason why it's so difficult for a lot of people is it because, like, just imagine, hold on, I gotta sneeze. Just imagine your entire conception, your entire the way you perceive yourself and others and reality and life and everything was false. That is quite confrontational. That is just a bit much for some people to chew. It's a bit too much to swallow. It's a little too much to stomach, right? It is just, and so I guess for a lot of people, they just, you have to first off have access or exposure to the kind of teachings that can help to take you beyond that level of awareness, but beyond ego consciousness, that kind of, that approach to how you handle yourself in life in relation to everything else that you think is and is going on and whatnot, right? So there's so many things in life that are even way more simple than that, and it's like people, the psyche is fragile. So like, to learn that you have no clue about anything, that you're dead wrong about everything, that you're completely out to lunch when it comes to pretty much everything, because you're operating from a place that doesn't have the capacity to it's inherently not really, I don't know, I don't want to say not possible, right? But like, it is, there are inherent, it has inherent shortcomings, sort of drawbacks, like just based on the way that it works, on its structure and stuff like that it's just like, there's just no way. I mean, and so this is challenging for people, and this is why it's like impossible. It's not impossible, right? I will die trying, but it is so challenging to explain to something to somebody. It's like a personality disorder, right? Like, it's like, because it's not them, it's you. So it's like, how can you, they just can't make the connection. And it is because it's like there's many things, and I've heard about this, it talked about in yoga and in other, say, spiritual type conversations, where it's like there is this thing, and it is a, for what it's worth, it's a disconnect from the heart space. Because if you are connected to that space, if you understand what that space represents, if you understand the heart, what it is and what it signifies to have heart, to be an example of love, of unconditional love, of compassion, of that kind of stuff, that is in many ways associated with this place that we call the heart. I mean, if you are operating from that level of consciousness, there are many things that you simply cannot do anymore. It puts a stop on certain things. It is just simply not possible when you are vibrating, when you are operating from a heart-based place, that you cannot, for example, be causing suffering in the world. You cannot be involved in things that are bringing misery to others, because you are constantly checking in with your heart space, and you are using your intellect to make sure that what you are doing is not detrimental, that you are not polluting this world. You cannot be littering, you cannot be wasting. You cannot be taking advantage of. You cannot be, doing those types of things. You don't cause harm. You because it is against everything that you are aware of, solidly, and because, and you can figure out all of the details intellectually, rationally, justifyingly, right, with your head, which is what this thing is good for, right? But so I don't know. I just really wanted to share that analogy about the prison cell, because to me, so far, that is the best way. And what's interesting too is because it's so easy to say that, right? But hearing myself say those words to myself, mentally or whatever, and I'm very honest with myself, and I thought, I was like, oh wow, this is like, it's like a person, it's like they're addicted to their own ego, to their own sense of self. Because like in yoga, in Sanskrit, the word for ego is ahamkara, which means the I maker. It's like me, I, me, mine. I did this. Oh yeah, well I, yeah, well, oh well I, me, mine. Well, what about me? Always, and so, just like thinking about this whole thing about how a person, it's like because or else how do you get trapped? How could a person be trapped inside of a box, inside of a very limiting, kind of narrow box? How does that happen? How does it come about? And so I think that at least it's like my intuition is telling me the sort of insight that came through was that it is to do with addiction. People are addicted to themselves. They're addicted to their own ideas, addicted to their image, addicted to what they think, and addicted to telling others how they think, addicted to letting others know, because that's just sort of how the ego operates, right? And so it's like it's crazy, because it comes down to this thing of addiction, and I think about, so for myself on a personal level, when it comes to things in my life that I myself have become addicted to, or have not become addicted to, because it's not the things that are addictive, it is like it's the behavior. And it's like, but when I have exhibited what is, typically referred to as addictive behavior, and it's funny because it's like something that you can recognize is not particularly ideal, and on a level that there's something, that doesn't make it's it's operating on a level, but maybe you're going through a tough time, and so you binge eat, or you say smoke a lot of weed, or you're drinking, or whatever it is. You distract yourself with like movies or television or whatever it is that you use essentially in place of confronting directly whatever it is that is creating the disturbance, you know, like the any sort of a need to escape or to try to cover something up or to fill the hole or whatever, right? And so, you know, like in being honest with myself, it's like, wow, you know, like, you know, I feel that. I feel how challenging it can be to be in a place where you are just not ready to let go of something that is familiar to you, that brings you comfort, that is, for as far as you might be concerned, a part of you. You identify with it, with you know, like a person identifying with the walls of their cell and with their existence within that. It is everything to them. It means everything to them, you know, especially too, like a person who's suffering from other kinds of addictions. It's like it's like you need that stuff. It's like, you know, if it's weed, it's like, I need to smoke weed. This is my only peace. This is the only way I can find peace. It's the only way I can find comfort. This is all that I got, right? And that's the ego. So, yeah. I'm sure there's more of this to come, right? Because this is just an ongoing thing. You know, looking for a way to describe something that is complex. It's not complicated, but the thing is you have to be ready for the comprehension or for the understanding. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be ready to, you know, essentially humility has to be present. You have to be ready to let go of certain ideas, or at least entertain other ones and see if they actually make more sense than the understanding that you have been working with. And so it is a challenging thing, right? And it's not pointing fingers, it's not judgment, you know, there's no feeling bad about any of this stuff. This is like the hardest thing in the world to deal with, right? It's your own mind and how it works, and it's like especially at the level of consciousness that most of humanity is at right now. This is like this is it. As far, you know, if I had to take a guess, this is the big one. And there are certain teachings that can help with this. And just to say it, one of them is called A Course in Miracles. That is for some people. It is not for some people. So I don't know who will hear this, but yeah, I felt like I needed to make this video. So